Welcome to Bluegrass Breakdown. I'm Matt.
And I'm Clifton. And so this is kind of a new adventure for us. We're going to be talking some about Kentucky basketball and some high school sports and mainly the 13th region. So we're usually texting or this season been griping about Kentucky after every game. So we figure why not build a small community and talk about it with some other people. So we're starting this podcast for that reason. We're going to try to upload probably a couple times a week, maybe after each game and previewing the upcoming game. So as long as they're playing 2 games a week, that's what we'll strive for as far as an upload schedule. So let's go ahead and get into it talking about the Cats. So, Matt, not really the season I don't think Kentucky's planned on, even though they're coming off big wins, comeback wins. What would you think as far as what people thought this season was going to look like versus what's actually happened?
I think me, along with a lot of people, expected this team to uh, be a Final Four level type team going into the season. That was the big talk from everybody, and everything that we heard from inside practices and things like that. We were like, we're uh, we're ready to be right up there at the top. Even Coach uh, Pope said, he's got a Ferrari and he's ready to, can't wait to unleash it and that kind of stuff. And so we're all pumped up, play Purdue, beat Purdue, and then everybody's real pumped up. And then it pretty much has been downhill ever since, up until the last this last week where we've had, as you mentioned, some great games. Um, but
Yeah, I thought those comments really has come back to bite him this season. Just I think we saw the Purdue game, and Kentucky as a fan base, we're always eager to. We're a fan base of extremes. Either we're the best in the world, or we're the worst team that's ever played, and we don't see middle ground a lot. And so we were eager to have a good team, especially things come out like how much money they spent on the roster, and like you said, he said we have a Ferrari, can't wait to use it, and it just immediately I thought, yeah, as soon as we played any quality competition, it's just been such a drastic difference than what we thought this team was going to look like.
yeah, I think against these lower level teams, we really looked good and seemed to be playing shot the ball pretty well. And as soon as we kind of played a Power Five team, especially at the beginning of the season, we've looked lost and we've looked um, lackadaisical. You can name it, and I think that's been one of the biggest disappointments for me at the beginning of the season against these better teams. Is just our lack of fight, hustle, and resilience in those first few losses.
Yeah, I can't remember if it was Evan Mize Analytics or Ken Palm, but one of those kind of statistical gurus said Kentucky has the greatest discrepancy when playing the bad teams versus quality competition. So we do great against the bad teams, and then the worst when it comes to good teams that we've played, those Power Five teams and Gonzaga. Um, and so I'm not sure. I think that frustrates me more than anything because you see the potential. And I was sharing with someone the other day. Just to me, what makes it bad is not that they're a bad team, because I think you can see individually, you see talent, yeah, you see the potential they have, but it's a lack of at times effort, and they play selfish, and that's what makes it the hardest to watch for me so far. Um, it's just that inconsistent effort.
Yeah,
Um, just like Tennessee, the first half, it almost felt like we are going through the motions. The offense was stagnant. And as a result, we got down by 16, a slight run there at the end of the first half that kept us in it and allowed the big run in the second half. Uh, but it's just inconsistency overall.
yeah, yeah, 100%. I mean, that's pretty much nails all of it. I mean, honestly, um, it's the you can go and look at the times that we've played well, and if you think about it, we've only played really well against good teams in a about 3 or 4 halves the whole
Yeah.
season. Um, you know, uh, and so that's kind of been what's disappointing. And I was, this bad play that we've seen, and most of it is made up of it's a lack of ball movement, poor
Yep.
shooting, lack of hustle, lack of effort, that type of stuff, and no sense of urgency. And then you see when we actually put the intensity in on the defensive side, um, things change for us. And as far as offensively, like you said, we weren't moving the ball against Tennessee, and it's once we start moving the ball, getting in the lane a little bit, and trying to make plays for each other. I mean, seems like we're just we start making shots, and things just go much better for us.
Yep. And I've thought all year, and Jay Billis may have even said this in the last game. Kentucky is built to be or an elite defensive team, and up to now they've just been at times very good, most time just good to above average, and a team that really doesn't have a consistent knockdown shooter, really doesn't have a consistent score. Always should be, but right now he's not shooting free throws good enough to be a consistent scorer, even though he's averaging, or was at least before the Tennessee game, 20 a game in the SEC play. Uh, but we don't have those things. So we are dependent upon a defense that can create shots, getting out in transition. And really, that's the only way this team is going to have any long term success.
Yeah. Well, we've seen bits and pieces and sparks of the defense. Pope at the beginning of the season said he felt this team could be elite defensively. We weren't seeing that at the beginning of the year against these better teams. But again, I think it all goes back to the hustle and effort on defense. I know I've said that 10 times already, but it really is what it boils down to. You can watch these games and you can see the lack of hustle on the 50-50 balls, and in those halves where we're getting beat by double digits within 5 minutes, and
Yep.
then it turns around when we uh, start, you know, playing defense with a purpose. Getting out and hedging, going on top of the screens instead of under them. One thing I noticed we did much better against Tennessee. Jasper Johnson, who played awesome in that against Tennessee in that
Yeah.
Tennessee game, I noticed he was going above the screens quite a bit, and those are things that you've got to be able to do to keep yourselves from getting, uh, you know, um, just in an imbalance on defense.
Yeah.
So
And You know, Jasper Johnson, I'm glad you said his name. He kind of kept him in it, I felt like, for stretches there in the first half. And, Aberdeen finally stepped up in the second half, and it made it hard for Jasper to get playing time really in the second, because luckily, Aberdeen was hitting shots and kind of became that primary scorer and ball handler. But really, when he was in foul trouble from, I think, maybe 2 minutes into the game, I think it was 17 minutes something when he got his second foul. Uh, Really, it was Jasper Johnson that kept them from it just getting almost like the Gonzaga game. I felt like that he was just a hair from just getting out of hand really bad.
yeah, I mean, honestly, Jasper Johnson saved the game for us. I mean,
Yep.
I know that it was all in the first half, and that we all had to play great in the second half, but Jasper saved the game because we're probably down 25
Yeah.
in at halftime if it's not for Jasper. And and like you said, he didn't play much in the second half because Denzel was playing just out of his mind again for the second game in a row in the second half. And listen, I don't know if it's just he's getting some confidence and really kind of getting into his own or whatever, but that little high pick on ball pick that we're doing, and him just being able to kind of get in the lane,
Yeah.
draw some defense, and then he's actually moving the ball. We're able to move the ball. We're getting better shots. I mean, we don't have Jalen Lowe, and he's done for the year. And we've had, which requires us to be able to get in the lane. Um, and Denzel's been doing this. He's been able to do that these last couple of games.
Yeah. And I think he's someone that needs a little more help like that. Like you said, that space, putting him in that ball screen. I thought early on way too much one-on-one from Aberdeen.
Yeah.
And really, I'll be honest, I hated watching him play. There was times, if I was, if I had this mic on me watching some games, I'm like, why play him? Just sit him. I didn't see that he added any value to our team. And I'm not sure what Pope envisioned from Aberdeen. He's obviously not a true point guard, and he's kind of forced into that position some with Lowe being hurt off and on, and now for the rest of the season. So that puts him in a bad spot, and so he's not a facilitator naturally. But I think Pope probably thought that he would it, be able to, I don't know, get his shot a little more easily than he can just one on one. He's
Yeah.
not like an explosive athlete, just average to above average probably uh, in his athleticism. And I think there's a lot of things Pope probably thought about this team when he said the Ferrari statement that's just not true. I think he thought all of his sophomores or second year players would in the system would take a big step up. Uh, I don't know. I felt like personally, and I hate to say this because he's from our area, but Noah's almost regressed defensively. He's not got a lot of opportunity, but when he has, I think defense has kind of been a real struggle point last year. And I hate that because sometimes his effort is what this team is missing. I think he thought we'd get more out of Diabate, um, Aberdeen, like we talked about. And I think really the only one that's kind of maybe taking a step that I see is Chandler. And he's had rough stretches, don't get me wrong, but I think when he's your fifth option on the court, that opens up a completely different game for Colin Chandler. When he's playing that 2 or 3 spot, he's your fifth option on offense or fourth. Uh, to me, it just opens up so much more that he's able to do, and he's not having to try to score like he was at times early in the year.
Yeah. Well, Chandler is not a creator. And
No,
so, he's best when he can when everyone else, when Denzel or when Lowe was playing, when somebody can get in the lane, inside out type game because he can shoot the ball. He's shooting 41% from the 3-point
yep,
line this year. Best on the team.
yep,
And and that's even with those stretches where he didn't shoot well at all. He's still
yeah,
shooting 41%. And so, he is, we've got to have him. And you know, a lot of things, you ask yourself, we're now 3-2 in the SEC. And, um, we come back from these two big deficits, and one of the primary reasons we came back was we were able to put the ball in the hole a little bit,
yeah.
and you've got to make some shots. And as of right now, Kentucky's the number one team in the SEC in 3-point shooting. Now, who
That's
in America, who in Kentucky in America would have thought that? I can promise you, if you're honest, nobody thought that
no,
was going to
nobody.
be the case.
It's
And
hard to believe now looking at the stats.
I mean, that's and so you can fix a lot of woes and issues when you can make some shots. And then if you add some defensive intensity and start playing some good, better defense, then you can start making some things happen. And I think that's uh, it's really changed the trajectory of this team. Malachi Moreno is just getting better each game.
Yeah,
And Diabate played good against Tennessee. Now Diabate is one of these who's I think it's going to be game to game with him.
yeah.
You know,
I
matchup
almost look at him
wise.
like Garrison. It's just kind of spot minutes when they're bringing it. They can really contribute. Um, like Garrison, somebody I don't know when he's on and he's focused, and sometimes it's just in a couple minute spurts, but he can bring a lot to a team. I think that's why he frustrates a lot of the fan base. I know why I've been frustrated at times with him is you see so much potential in him. You're like he has every single tool there is,
Yeah,
and it just doesn't click sometimes. I think Diabate is the same way. Physically, he's the strongest player we have. When he's engaged, he plays harder than anyone else we have, and it's just you know how well is he gelling with his teammates?
yeah. We've got to have Diabate do what he does best.
Yeah,
We can't count on him to be a scorer for us really, but you know if he can start making those layups that he's been missing these last few games, you know, uh, and those kind of shorter shots, I mean, that's going to help us because we don't need him to shoot. But in that Tennessee game, man, he gave us a spark. I don't know if you saw, but he led us in plus minus in that game at
Yep.
plus 16, and he he just played good. And there's going to be those games where he does that for us. And a lot
Hmm.
of it's, again, a lot of it's matchup. We could play a team that's got a kind of a stretch four that's a little bigger that sometimes he could have a hard time with, but he was a matched up great with Tennessee the other night and just gave us, I mean, just lifted us. I mean, he was a warrior on the boards. And
And I wouldn't care a bit to see him sometimes playing kind of that small ball five, even if they had to in a pinch. Maybe if it's a game, Malachi's in foul trouble and Garrison's not bringing it because he's strong enough. He's got long arms. He's a little undersized, but I think he could play it there in spot minutes. And I've always kind of wanted to see the lineup this year, and I've not looked at anything to see how many minutes they've played together or how well they've done. But whoever your point guard is, and at this point, it's either going to be Aberdeen or Jasper Johnson in any given moment. But them at the one, and then Chandler and Oway at the 2 and the 3, whichever spot you want to put one in. I would like to see Cam Williams then in that stretch 4 spot, and then Marino at the 5.
yeah,
To me, that's probably the lineup that gives Kentucky the most spacing. It
yeah.
allows someone like Otega Oway to thrive because there's space to drive to the lane and get to the basket, and there's not a lot of lineups out there that Kentucky can say, all right, we have shooters at multiple positions, and there's
Yeah, I
floor
love that
spacing.
lineup. I think that's probably our best offensive lineup.
Yeah,
I don't think there's much question about that. I think it's our best offensive lineup. And then you can even throw in Yelovich at the
yep,
4 and Cam at the 3 if you want to go a little bigger.
yep, and that's what they've been starting the last couple games with
Yeah,
that with
you
Chandler
know,
coming off the bench, right?
yeah, that's right. And that's I like that lineup. Again, Yelovich, it's all about matchup. Some against some
Yep,
teams, but Yelovich is going to help us in a lot of games. I mean,
yep.
he's gonna come in and win a game for us. I feel like one of these nights when
Yeah, you're blessed in the fact that probably who Yelovich doesn't do well against, that's made for Diabate then, and vice versa.
yeah, yeah, and we got a bunch of guys that can give you good spot minutes, like you said, Garrison, and I agree with you, Garrison. There's times when he's engaged and locked in. I mean, he can really help you. It's just
Yeah,
those
he looks like
times where
someone
he
who
just
could play in
seems
the NBA.
to lose his mind at
Yep,
times. And when that happens, you just got to put him on the bench. You just
yep,
and that's kind of how I felt about Aberdeen there before he kind of Aberdeen. I thought Aberdeen can do some good things for you, but it seemed like earlier he'd do a couple of good things and do four bad things, and then he just it's like let him do a couple good things and then go put him on the bench for a little bit. But
yeah.
now he's showing that. Like I said, I think he's getting more comfortable in what he's got to do. And with Jasper John, I don't know if you noticed, but in that Tennessee game, he had Jasper Aberdeen on it in the game at the same time for a little bit, which I liked. And Oway, we went small. Oway was playing the 4 there for just a little
Yep.
bit. Because here's the thing about Jasper too. Jasper can get in the lane about any time he wants.
Yes.
And I tell you what's underrated about his game that I know that I've noticed, and I thought he really showcased this against Tennessee, is he's a great passer.
Yeah.
He really is a good passer. He's probably our best passer at actually feeding the post. When Malachi gets down there and posts up, if he's open, Jasper's giving it to him, and then and that allows for him to either try to make a move or in inside out. But I think Jasper's going to get you know just continue to improve, and I think he might be that star you know that we're looking for in the future.
I
Um,
hope so. And he's someone that I hope, that's able to carve out a role here that the team's happy with and will thrive with, but also that he's happy with because I think he's someone that we desperately need to build around for the future.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's. I agree with you. Um, so yeah, so far so good. We lost the one to Missouri, but I think we gained that win back uh, with the Tennessee road win.
Hmm.
Uh, so what are you thinking about Texas? How you what?
Well, when I look at Texas, and I've not watched them play a whole lot, just minutes here and there. They kind of remind me of Kentucky, to be honest, in the fact that they're inconsistent.
Yeah,
It's what Texas shows up is going to determine kind of what kind of game Kentucky's in for. They just got smacked by Tennessee. They lost to Mississippi State, but then that team's able to turn around and win against Alabama and end Vanderbilt's undefeated season. They gave them their first. They were able to give Vanderbilt their first loss. So that's really it's hard to know who's going to show up. They're kind of led by Swain. He's a 6'8" guard that's just huge and leads their team in points, rebounds, and assists. So they kind of go as he goes. I don't know. I think they're like Kentucky in a lot of ways.
yeah, yeah. I agree. You know, uh, I was looking kind of at their lineup a little bit, um, and they've got four guys that average in double figures,
Yeah.
and um, so they're they spread it out a little bit. Two guys that average 15 a game, um, and we're going to have to again. We've got to come out defensively.
Yeah, and I think they're probably like a lot of teams. Both those guys is their center, and I'm not even going to try to pronounce his name. He's from Lithuania, and Swain. They're both transfers from, I think, the center's from Florida Atlantic, Swain's from Xavier, and so that may lead to some of the inconsistencies. Um, you know, Much like Kentucky, you have a lot of transfers that are coming in, guys that have never played together, and even though you may have a lot of college experience, if you've played on your second and third team, it's really hard to know your role on the team you're on now. And so I think ultimately that leads to some of the ups and downs that some of these teams have, like both Texas and Kentucky.
Yeah, yeah. They've got some good wins. Texas does. So the fact of the matter is we're going to have to come out and play tomorrow, or we're going to get beat.
Yeah,
We cannot keep we've got to try to keep from getting into a big deficit. And and again, I think it starts at the defensive end. Um, if we can come out with that defensive intensity, I think the offense will uh, will be okay. Get into a rhythm, but we just can't allow them to come out and give them easy buckets. And uh, we just it seems like in these first halves we're just a step slow on contesting shots and a step slow on step on hedging and just things like that. And we just got to come out with the right intensity. I think we'll be okay.
yeah. I mean, you can't. This isn't a game to me that you can afford to lose. You're at home, um, and so those home wins are something that Kentucky has to value because we have a lot of the bad teams kind of at home this year, the way the schedule's laid out. So we can't afford to drop one. And not to say Texas is a bad team, but they're not Alabama, they're not
Yeah,
Tennessee, they're not Florida. Um, and so this is just one you can't drop. But if you could, I'm to the point with this team that I would rather them um, I don't play hard from the get go. Be in a dogfight and lose a close game at the end, then another one of these comeback wins where they're just playing half of a game. I want to see a full game from Kentucky, see what
yeah.
that looks like, so what is our ceiling. Do we still have a chance to make a run? Not a title run probably for this team. That's not in the cards, but can we make a run to that second weekend of the NCAA tournament, or is this something where we're just going to be scratching and clawing to even make the tournament and wasting our time if we do get there?
Right. Well, uh, uh, all the above.
Yeah.
I think we just have to. Right now, I think I saw I don't remember. Maybe Field of 68 had us at an 8 or 9 seed.
Yeah, that
I
sounds right.
thought, and and before, but we probably weren't a tournament team a week ago, and
Yeah.
and or we were maybe on the fringes.
Yeah,
Um,
I think we were probably right at the bubble line before the LSU game. That maybe got us solidly on the bubble, and then the Tennessee game probably gets you where you're pretty safely in. But I don't know. It's hard for me to ever imagine like Kentucky playing in the first four. I don't even like the thoughts of that. It's just like,
no, no, nobody wants that game. And so, I think we just have to, we've got to hold serve here at home. You know what I mean? We've got to hold
yeah,
it this week. Try to get up to 5-2, and then we've kind of got a gauntlet coming up, and just and hope we can steal a couple, and steal one or so of those, and we just got to. But I do think that this team is starting to develop a little bit of an identity now. Um, but we need to, we need to, we can't keep getting down because you're not going to be able to keep doing that. I mean,
no, that can't be a game plan for success moving forward, and
that's not
think you're going to be able to
sustainable,
consistent. No,
you know. And so we've got to figure it out in this first half, and hopefully, again, I'm sure they all know. I mean, that's the thing. It's like they know what's been going on, so hopefully they can figure it out. And at some point, the team just has to, you know, I mean, the players have to take it upon themselves to get themselves ready. I mean, I know the coaches have to do their part too, and all that, but the players have to do their part and get ready. And
exactly. I think there's blame to go around, but like I said, hopefully 24 hours from now, we're looking at a Kentucky win and one where they've put together a sustained effort. Well, let's talk a little bit about high school sports here as we get ready to start wrapping up. Um, you know, as we're talking about, across the state of Kentucky, kind of getting in the back half of the basketball season here. And like I said, we're going to talk some about the 13th region. And you've probably seen more ball this year than me, man. I've just got to actually go in person and watch a couple games, some from the 52nd district, some from the 51st.
uh,
But what's going on down your way in the Corbin area? What's
well, I think the region, and as far as I think it's pretty acknowledged that the Bell County and North Laurel are the top two teams in the region.
Yeah,
I don't
that's what
think
I was thinking. The boys and girls, I think there's two favorites that are pretty clear cut. And like you said, the boys, it's North
yeah,
and it's
yeah,
in
for the
Bell
boys,
County. And I probably give the slight edge as far as who's the favorite to North. I think they've been there, they've done it,
yeah,
um, and so
yeah,
these kids kind of
they'll,
know what to expect. And then
yeah.
both Laurel County schools, as far as the girls, they just look really good this year.
Yeah, yeah. Both the Laurel counties, I think, are kind of in their own little class right now, in the girls in the region right now. Um, then it's kind of we've got a bunch of teams kind of middle of the pack there.
Yeah,
The
it
boys,
almost seems to me like with both cases, both the boys and the girls, you have these two favorites that are kind of vying it out. You have maybe a dark horse, like possibly, I think for the boys, maybe Clay County. Whitley's probably maybe feels like they should be right there too. And then for the girls, Knox Central seems like that probably that third, but it's a distant third, probably like the boys. And there's a few teams there in that middle, and then there's a huge drop off, I think, for everybody
yeah,
else in both of them.
yeah. There's a big drop off there towards the end. There's not a lot of good basketball being played on some of this by some of these teams, but you know yeah, I think you're looking at North as far as boys. North and Bell are your top two. Then you've got Clay, but maybe a notch. But Clay, Whitley, Corbin, South, all four of those teams can beat each other.
Yeah,
Corbin beat South. South beat Whitley. Um, Corbin plays Whitley tonight. Now I know Whitley's I think he's out. One of probably their best player, if not their second best player. Uh, I don't think is playing. He hurt his foot apparently. Um, so that'll, you know, if he doesn't play, I'm not sure they'll be able to beat Corbin. But again, you've got those four teams are all pretty close, but you'd probably give the edge to Clay, like you said, because Clay beat South, uh, Corbin, and Whitley.
Well,
So
and I think Bell County, they've got a doubleheader tonight. I think it's with Harlan City. I know their boys. Someone was telling me Harlan City's kind of made a big jump up. Had some wins against some of
yeah,
the
I think their
smaller
boys
teams.
are
So
coming along.
I'll be interested to see how that goes tonight. But like I said, we'll be talking some high school sports throughout the season, and especially as we get close to the 13th region tournament. I think it's going to be a really good tournament. Anytime you have two contenders at the top, that's really something we've not had in this region in a while. It's kind of been a favorite and everybody else. So I'm looking forward to those. We'll talk about some later in the week. So before we close, man, I got one thing. It just popped up on my phone. I want to know if you're watching it later this month. On Netflix Live, this guy's going to do a climb free, no ropes, no harness, of a skyscraper up this glass building. You watching that?
Uh, well, I may have to now.
I don't know if I've got the nerve for it. Have you watched Free Solo? Have you watched the documentary
Uh, what was it called?
Free Solo?
No,
Where the guy he climbs El Capitan.
no, I'm not seeing it.
Pretty much, it's like a guy climbing a mountain that's be like your granite countertops, and so he's crazy. But he's going to climb it live on Netflix later this month. It just popped up, and I was like, well, wonder if Matt would watch that.
I don't know. I'd have to. I'd probably have to only watch it if I knew he didn't fall to his.
Not watch it live.
But yeah, I may have to check that out at the end of the month.
All right. Well, I guess that'll wrap it up for us here, episode 1 of Bluegrass Breakdown. So, Matt, it's been fun. I've enjoyed it.
Yeah, man, enjoyed it, Clifton. We'll talk to you.
All right. See you, everybody.
Later.